Time to talk about NFL Week 7. Gino Bacola here, along with Erik from ETOF21 Sports. Apologies to everyone. I'm a little under the weather this week, so I'll be leaning on Erik a little bit. If I'm a little shorter with some of the analysis, that is why. Or if you hear me with any of the performance-enhancing drugs, I've got my Mucinex sore throat right here. I got some cough drops and some lozenges. So we're ready to rock and roll, Erik. Man, we're already into NFL Week 7. Last week, not a great week for me when their road favorites are 9-0 against the spread. Just generally not a good recipe for me. We knew one of these weeks was coming because the dogs had been so good recently. I think the favorites were 10-3-1 against the spread last week, and just something overall to keep an eye on. The NFC North combined 17-5. Every team is 4-2 or better for the first time. Erik, this is your division, a division that was kind of a laughingstock for a little while. And now we may have 4 playoff teams this year through 6 games. They have the best 4 point differentials in the entire league. So the division has the best point differential. Lions went from 8th in net scoring to 2nd in 1 week because of their big blowout. Only the Vikings have outscored their opponents by more. And the Bears plus 47, Green Bay plus the 41. So a nice little start to the year for your division.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Bears, their quality of opponent. They have a tough little stretch coming up. I think the Packers and the Lions are the class. Vikings, I think, are going to eventually come down to earth. Bears, I mean, you can make an argument they should only have won a couple games, but, they're winning games. You got to give them credit. So it's going to be interesting to see once they start playing each other how that all plays out and everything.
Now we'll get to Thursday night football. We have the Saints as the first game we're going to take a look at. Let's go back to the top of the games here on the board. Saints hosting the Denver Broncos. Broncos are 2.5-point favorite here on the road. So we get the Sean Payton revenge game. Spencer Rattler for the Saints completed 10 of his first 13 passes last week. Then after some adjustments, struggled in the second half, going 11 of 23, 2 interceptions. And that was a weird game. Tampa got up 17-0. Then the Saints were up 27-24 going into half. And then they got shut out in the second half and they lost 51-27. It was nuts. It was so weird, back and forth. Man, and we like the Saints a little bit to start the year, but the thing that we're always worried about is Dennis Allen as a head coach and their depth. It's funny. Saints were really good the first couple weeks before everybody started getting hurt. If you look at their depth chart from week 1, starting quarterback out, wide receiver 1 out, wide receiver 2 out, RB1 banged up but playing Kamara, starting center, starting left guard, starting right guard, all out, Taysom Hill out. They're just
too banged up. But I mean, like, when we look at this game,
should Knicks be favored on the road over anybody?
No, and I mean, the other thing you have to keep in mind, and I've talked about this before, when teams are on the field defensively for over 70 plays. Last week, the Broncos were on the field for 75 plays on defense. I don't listen to many podcasts, but I do now and then listen to the Chris Long one. And he was mentioning how when you're on the field for over 70 plays and you have an off-scheduled week, your body just can't catch up. And that's what it is here. You have the Denver Broncos who played in Denver on the field for 75 plays, traveling cross country to play New Orleans on a short week. I think that's a little bit too much. Teams that lost after giving up 50, Saints gave up 50 last week, 60% ATS. Teams on a 4-game losing streak, home dogs, 67%. Last 5 years, teams that opened as a favorite but closed as a dog. Saints did open up as a favorite here. Now they're at a dog. I don't see this getting with them being a favorite, 59%. Rookie quarterbacks historically have struggled on the road on Thursday night. Saints are a running team. The Broncos run a wide 9 blocking scheme. And historically speaking, Joseph's wide 9 blocking scheme struggles versus the run. They're allowing 114 yards per game against the wide zone scheme. I think the Saints will be able to run the ball. The Broncos have had 3 games this season when they haven't scored in the first half. Look, I know everyone's trying to make Bo Nix into a thing, but you have to score. half of their games, they haven't even scored a point.
Entering the fourth quarter
And
last week, he had 33 rushing yards and 27 passing yards going into the fourth quarter.
all his stuff is when they're in the hurry up mode. That's when all his production.
Well, because that's one thing that I was listening. I can't remember who pointed it out, but he does not look comfortable. You can just tell because there's no progression with him. Like looking at guys like Daniels and even what we've seen Caleb in the growth of the last few weeks, there are times where they will take their time, look around. He does not seem comfortable at all. Everything is really quick. So I mean, it just feels like the side to be here.
Yeah, I don't.
Saints at home.
And there's this one side I look at that has to do with luck rankings. They have the Saints graded as the third most unluckiest team. So I mean, that has to do with, like, case in point, for second offensive play you have, Olave catches the ball, gets a hit in the head, should have been targeting,
and he's out.
Not called. He's out. He fumbles. The fumble's returned for a touchdown. You know what I mean? Like the Falcons game, they gave up 14 points on random stuff, losing a 50 and Yahoo Koo's longest field goal ever. It's just they're due for some positive regression. But I think the main thing is short week, and you're on the field for 75 plays. That just adds up.
Let's move along to Sunday morning in London. We love our friends over in London so much that we're going to give them the Jags versus the Pats, two teams who have not been good this year. We saw Evan Ingram get back last week for the Jags. I think that was a big help. He looked good. They got Gabe Davis involved, and Trevor Lawrence has been fine the last few weeks, but last week they just couldn't run the ball at all. And pass rush was non-existent. It was good a few weeks ago. And then even against a bad Bears offensive line, they didn't get a whole lot of pressure. They also dropped 4 would have been touchdown passes, including one on the first drive and then 3 later in the game. So I think it's very fair to criticize Lawrence, but also there were some bad drops in that game that could have made the game a little bit closer or maybe just changed things a bit. On the Patriots side, Drake May started, and he did look a lot more competent. 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, even with some obvious mistakes here and there. They were down 14-0, and he had a bad overthrow for interception. But then he started to figure things out a little bit. They went on an 84-yard drive. Bad start to the second half, though. Picked things up later in the game. But it's tough to really get a gauge for May because right now, I mean, the Patriots last week were starting 3 offensive linemen who had less than 100 career snaps each. Their starting center was just signed off the Raiders practice squad. So they're doing the best they can with just not much on the offensive side. Do you have an opinion here one way or the other?
No, I mean, like so the Jags are interesting. Like you mentioned them, they're playing the Bears last week. Bears 30th DVOA, allowed 121 yards on the ground. They only had 8 rushing attempts at halftime. So it's just, I don't think they look to attack the running game. There's this weird thing going on with Etienne and Peterson. From what I was told is in a meeting, Etienne called out Peterson with what's going on with the offense. And Peterson did not like that. And that has led to more Bigsby run and this mysterious phantom injury. We have to remember there is that weird, he didn't, what was it? The first series, he wasn't out there against the Texans, and then he goes out there. And that's when it all happened. He was very critical about the offense and what Peterson's trying to do. Williams, first rookie quarterback ever to cover in Europe. Film on May looked good. The issue is the offensive line. My worry with him is he just with how bad the offensive line is, could turn into Mitch Trubisky, just a lifetime backup quarterback who's running for his life and got hit too much as a rookie. Jags defensively, 32 DVOA overall in a pass defense and 16th rushing. Are they going to be able to get enough stops? Stevenson's coming back. That's going to be huge. You're going to be able to lean on him and run the ball. Jags, this is the second standalone game this year the Jags have quit on. The game was it a Monday night?
The Bills.
Yep. In Buffalo, they just quit, and they quit in that game.
And what's a bump, not a bummer, but like their other games were all winnable. The other 4 games they were in, they could have won all of them. So it's so disappointing to see them completely pack it in in those situations, it feels like it's a coaching thing from the top down. Like I think they're going to need to make a change.
And the whole extending Lawrence, we didn't have to, didn't make sense. And look, honestly, if I were to bet this with the historical trend of how rookies have struggled, I would lean Jags. I will probably take a hard look at props, probably dig into one of those props. I also don't like the Jags offense. Last year, the Jags offense everything was in the middle. Kirk and Ingram were the focal points of the offense, and them working the middle opened everything up. Now this year, he's trying to hawk the ball down to Brian Thomas Jr. Now, granted, have there been some explosive plays? Yeah. But is the team winning? And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
I'll try to find some plays. I would lean to the Jags, maybe a Jags first half bet if you can get it under 3, but I don't want anything to do with this game.
Seattle Seahawks at Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are a 3-point favorite in this one. Seattle 3-0 to start. Now they've lost 3 straight games in a total of 11 days. They just couldn't run the ball at all. They're a team that when they're running the ball, then their offense could be really nice because they have 3 or 4 solid wide receivers, different receivers out there. They have a good back, but their offensive line is just really bad right now. And so they're having a tough time being consistent with getting that push for the run. They only had 52 yards rushing, 20 total carries. So they're not running the ball, and then they allowed San Francisco to run for 228 yards without McCaffrey. I mean, right there, if you just looked at those 2 stats, how were you against the run? How was the other team with the run? And you would just imagine they lost. Now, they were down big early. They came all the way back with a chance late. They feel like this is probably about who they are, Eric. They probably weren't quite as good as they're 3-0, and they're not probably as bad as losing 3 in a row because they're a little more banged up right now. And you look at the Falcons on the flip side. The Falcons come off of actually their best game of the year as far as they looked solid. It wasn't like a last-minute win for them. It was still pretty close going into the fourth quarter, but overall, they're just a little more talented than the Panthers, who they were able to beat up on. And that was a huge win for them. There was a 3rd divisional win in the last 3 weeks. So now they're 4-2. And they were able to run the ball with both Algier and with Bijan. It was a big, you had a decent game from London. You had a nice big play from Pitts as well. But where they struggle, the Falcons, they come into the game ranked 31st in the league in quarterback pressure rate. So when I'm talking about Seattle and some of the struggles they have with the offensive line, Atlanta might not be the team to capitalize on that particular part. They may not be the team that makes Seattle pay all that much for that aspect. I don't know how to get a feel for this Seattle team, Eric. They're one of the more confusing teams for me this year.
Yeah, this game is really weird to me. I know both teams are good offensively. They can put up points, but this is a crazy high total to me, 51.5. Maybe if this game or a couple early touchdowns will take a live under. If it starts a little slow, look to take a live over. Falcons defensively has some issues in my eyes. 20th DVOA, 21st DVOA, defending the pass, 20th defending the run. Are they going to be able to get stops when it matters? They're 26th DVOA defending wide receivers 1. Will they be able to stop DK Metcalf? For how bad the offensive line has been for the Falcons, it's been worse for the Seahawks. They are at the 29th PFF graded offensive line.
Terrible.
They have allowed the most pressures of any offensive line, and the right side alone has allowed 11 pressures. I don't play sack props often, but a Judon or Garrett over half a sack prop, you get that plus 150 or more with this offensive line. I think it's definitely worth a look. The issue with the Seattle Seahawks offense has been that. I know there's this clip of Metcalf saying throw the ball down the field. But
if you're not blocking, you're not going to get time.
You can't have these long, drawn-out plays. Grubb, their OC, says he wants to run the ball. But again, if these guys aren't setting up lanes, it's going to be hard for them to generate the run. And what's going on with Bijan Robinson? For the life of me, I have no idea why the Falcons don't like this guy.
I know.
It seemed to me that they were adamant about getting Algier 100 yards last week.
I know.
And Robinson was just sitting at 90 for the longest time. Falcons regression, the little site I use, they've been graded out as one of the luckiest teams. They're due for some negative regression in that. Seahawks defense is on rest. I mentioned it. They had over 80 plays, and they went in that game against the 49ers. Defense was just too tired, couldn't get enough stops. I think this is going to be the DFS game of the week. What do I mean by that? This is going to be the game people look to stack in it. I would, if I was using this game, I would just pick one guy, and that would be on one side of the ball. Just take a stand with one guy, just because if everyone's in this game, you're going to have to be different if you want to win the big prize. Both teams defensively have issues, offensive line have issues. Hard to trust either team winning by 3.5 and winning with margin. If the Seahawks get to 3.5, I'll look to live bet. But I mean, in my eyes, I think there's going to be a scenario in this game where you can get plus money on both teams.
Yeah, at 3.5, that's where I definitely probably buy in on the Seattle side. But I feel like Atlanta's a little overvalued now, just based on that. But it's not really built into the line that much. This is probably a pretty fair line at just a straight -3. So yeah, I don't really see the advantage either way with that number.
This is just whoever has the ball last. There's a couple games like this week, and one team is just favored because they're home.
Yep. Yeah. Titans Bills, where we get Josh Allen versus maybe like a younger, less good version of Josh Allen in Will Levis.
My note for this game: Callahan shouldn't be a coach. He's only a coach because of his dad. We look at the game last week.
Coming off a bye.
You have a team that has given up the 6th most yards to wide receivers. You look at Ridley's production against cover 3, the worst graded defense defending opponents' wide receiver ones. You look at his yards per catch against zone coverage. Phenomenal matchup. You have the coach beforehand saying, hey, you know what? I need to do a better job of getting him involved. He did not get his first target until the 12-minute mark in the 3rd quarter. His only touch of the ball was a handoff. That shouldn't be happening.
I mean, they have Hopkins, Ridley, and Boyd. That's a really good group of 3 wide receivers.
I mean, like, you look at the statistical matchups. Ridley had the best matchup, and he was not targeted at all. And that's the difference between these coaches that, get stuff and don't get stuff. Case in point, the Ravens.
Yeah.
They're not a passing team. Zay Flowers isn't the focal point of that offense. He had 9 for 132. There is no reason Ridley is not capable of having that stat line. It's really hard for me to trust this Titans team.
Me too.
And I've said it from day one. NFL coaching is a good old boys team, good old boys league. Like your son, someone you know, you get them a gig and they roll with it and they just recycle. Callahan, he has no business being a head coach, and is showing.
So last week in that game, Eric, like the offensive line that had been struggling most of the year, they played their best game of the season. They only allowed 6 pressures, no sacks, 30 pass plays. They had a 90 pass blocking efficiency. They were graded the 6th highest offensive line of the week last week. So in a game when they were blocking well, they were running well, they had positive scheme advantage, they had 3 healthy, legitimate wide receivers, they could still only get 95 yards passing.
It was just like Levis just isn't the guy. The Titans they literally could be the worst team in the NFL.
And what's funny is
if
their defense
Vrabel. If Vrabel is still the coach of this team, think about where they are.
If it's Vrabel and Mason Rudolph right now, they're not a team that could win the Super Bowl. They're not a team that could even win a playoff game, probably. But right now, they would be a team that would be in line to make the playoffs, and they'd be like a 500 team.
And it's just the grass isn't greener on the other side.
No.
In terms of the Bills, I mean, look.
Cooper, we got the Cooper trade. That's what they needed, right?
The thing with Cooper, and I know everyone is making, Amari Cooper is there. Look, is he going to be the alpha? Is he going to command the respect of the defense? maybe, but 8%. If your drop rate is 8%, you're having an awful season. His drop rate is 17% right now, which is insanely bad. And if he can't catch the ball, it's going to be really tough. How does this affect Shakir? Shakir will probably work more to the inside now and be the inside slot type guy. Cooper will slide to be the outside, the X wide receiver. They still really don't have that field stretcher. They let Valdez-Scantling go. I don't know. I mean, it makes the offense better, but I don't think.
Yeah, I agree, right? Like they're better, but is it game changing? And you're spot on. Like Cooper has always been, even at his best, like a very. You do a good job of this, of like placing people where, like, in the tiers they belong. And he's a low number one, more like a high number two. But he's still better than what they have, the options they have there. But he's not one of those guys that's going to go out there and get you like 12, 15 catches all that much. He'll have like nice games. He's a good guy they can go to on third downs. You're pointing out the drops, which is absolutely correct. Like, he's not a perfect receiver. He just is a better option than what they have now. But I agree. It's not like, oh my gosh, they got Cooper. It's just, yeah, that'll probably help them on a couple of their drives throughout the game when they just need another like safe 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, and they can find a guy to go to.
Yeah. I mean, but this is like, end of the day, like,
what the play here, nothing really. That like, no way we
like,
can get
no, like, just if you're still alive in Survivor and you haven't used the Bills, this is the week. Other than that, just move along.
So next up, we have a divisional game here, man.
So I have to be honest here. Like, this is moved. Like, when Cooper this was at 5.5. When this trade was announced, this moved all the way up to 6.5. I gave this one out on my show at 6.5 because I thought the move
would keep going.
Well, no, I thought it was unjust. I thought this was just people just overreacting to the move because it moved from 5.5 to plus 6.5. And what is it right now?
6.
So, I mean, I still play at the 6. Last 7 years, home divisional dogs in September and October, 57% against the number. Last 5 years, 58% against the number. Why is that important? Why do I look at the first couple of months? Because this is when teams are still kind of battling it out. We've seen this in the past where teams kind of shut it down the back half if they're not going to make the playoffs. Stefanski is a home dog, 63% of the number. Another thing is, how can we really trust this Bengals laying such a big number? They're 22nd DVOA in defense, 22nd DVOA passing defense, and in rushing defense. They are the 5th worst grading tackling team per PFF, the 2nd worst pass rush per PFF, and the 9th worst coverage grade per PFF. That's not a defense I want to be laying points with. The things that stood out to me is Watson struggles when he faces a team that can generate a pass rush. The Bengals struggle to generate the pass rush. They only have one true pass rusher. I think Watson is actually going to have some time. I think he's going to be able to move the ball. There was a spot during the Eagles game when he went 14 for 14, and he was moving the ball up the field. Last 3 games, the Bengals are allowing an average of 400 yards per game. They announced that Nick Chubb is coming back. Look, is he going to run for 100 yards? No. Offensive line isn't as good as last year. He's had 2 major reconstructive surgeries, but he's the leader of this team. I think he's going to give him an emotional bump. Bengals offensive line has been a nightmare. Giants, without Thibodeau, were able to generate a pass rush and make Joe Burrow uncomfortable. Now you're playing the Browns with Myles Garrett, who's one of the best pass rushers in the league. I think he's going to be able, him and Smith will be able to get home, make life a little difficult for Burrow. Conkin and Wirfs are both back. Now this is the 2nd game when they're both back. I think we're going to see an uptick with this offensive line, being able to set up some running lines from Foreman, Strong, and Chubb, and give Watson some time. And I'm going to be honest, look, my Sunday and Monday sucked. I had the Jets plus 2.5, Greg the leg, 2 missed kicks, and then I had the Giants plus 3.5, and the Bengals had no business covering that game. They scored a touchdown and a 40-yard run by Joe Burrow.
Late.
Yeah, Chase Brown fumbled that went through a Giants defender's legs. Chase Brown got the first down, but decided to score a 30-yard touchdown run instead of going down. Public teams went 10-3-1 last week.
Yeah, that's what you and I are not doing good on a week like that. And the key was what we don't bet. The road favorites were 9-0.
9-0. So this number's too big. This is them and the Commanders are the two biggest public sides this week. I think we're going to get added value on it.
And mainly because nobody wants to play the other side. Yeah. Nobody wants to play the Browns right now. You can look at the Browns. They've been bad. It's hard to find a lot of positive stuff. I mean, we can do the whole laugh at Watson thing again. He has a worse EPA through weeks 1 through 6 than Jamarcus Russell, which was the all-time low record since 2000. They're the first team in 10 years not to score 20 points in any of their first 6 starts. I mean, I got a lot of funny ones that, like, if we're doing a roast of Watson, I could sit here for a while and roast him. But the Bengals, defensively, shouldn't be favored by 6 on the road because their defense is so bad. And they've just been a team this year that has squandered leads and that hasn't been able to win close games. So why should they be favored by almost a touchdown on the road? Yeah, it's just too much. The crazy thing is for the Browns, like, let's say they lose this game, maybe, and they cover for us if we play them. They still have to play the Chiefs, the Ravens twice, the Steelers twice, and the Bengals again. It's like there's some of those games that could just be ugly for them. Let's get to our next one. These were the two kind of buzzy teams coming off of last year's playoffs, Eric. I thought they were kind of the hot teams that a lot of the pundits and the talking heads out there were predicting to make long runs in the playoffs because they're both led by young quarterbacks. We've got the Packers hosting the Texans. Packers are a 2.5-ish point favorite in this one. Love versus Stroud. Two guys who took big steps forward last year. Love comes off of a nice game. He looked a lot more healthy. 4 touchdowns. Cardinals are kind of like a every other game team. They just play really well, and then the next game they just completely don't show up. And it seemed like that was last week for the Cardinals. The Packers defense has been doing a little bit more what they were hoping to do, forcing turnovers. They forced 18 turnovers last year total. This year, they've already forced 17. So they had 3 fumbles forced in the second half against the Cardinals. Love was not sacked on any of his 12 pressures, so positive there. And then on the Texans side, they looked much better as a competent offense with Mixon back. I mean, he just seems like the guy that really helps that offense like move a little bit better, Eric. I haven't been all that impressed with them overall this year, but offensively, they looked way better. They had 213 rushing yards, 159 from Mixon. They were only averaging 77 yards rushing per game without Mixon. So him coming back last week showed he's a big part of their offense, and he really does help them. Any strong opinion one way or the other here?
No idea what to do here. Stroud historically has struggled on the road. Yes, yards per game, worst completion percentage, worst TD to INT ratio. You mentioned Mixon. The thing that Mixon is able to do is Slowick's offense is such an early run. They just run early. That's all they do. Run a lot of first and second down runs. Mixon is just way more explosive on those early downs, averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Packers are allowed 110 yards. Are they going to be able to generate enough stops? Also, I think another thing is Love throws a lot of balls off of his back foot, especially when facing pass rush. Are Anderson and crew going to be able to get home? Do the Packers have the guys on the outside to stop Diggs, Dell, and crew? I don't know if their secondary is bad.
I agree.
I mean, they have the safety they brought in from the Giants, who's been lights out, but he's not that good in coverage. He's more of a zone roaming defender. Do the Texans have the DBs to stop Jalen Reed and everybody? Are the Texans going to be able to stop Josh Jacobs? There's just a lot of questions here. I think this is another game where there's going to be some DFS value in it. Obviously, if I was going to pick a guy I'd want to attack here, I'd probably look for a Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs. I think those are the guys that have the 2 biggest upside because I think they're going to run the ball a lot more than people think. But in center sides, this gets to 3.5. I'd be interested. But right now, This 2.5 to 3, this little dance it's doing, I want nothing
Yeah,
to do with it.
feels about accurate. Stay away from me as well. Let's move to the Dolphins at the Colts. So for the Colts, this is Richardson, right? Is Richardson back or do we know yet?
Oh my God.
No idea.
We have no idea. And
Because Flacco's continue to play pretty well for them. And on the other side, is it Huntley?
it's looking like it's
Snoop Huntley versus right now we think Flacco, who's a 3-point favorite for the Colts. He's thrown multiple touchdown passes in each of his last 8 games. The 4th quarterback in NFL history to do that at age 38 or older. Got to give some love to my USC guy, Pittman. He was questionable to play last week, dealing with a back injury.
Well,
you could tell.
That's why I wanted to ask you. Was he questionable, looking to go on IR because it was going to be Anthony Richardson? You know what I mean? Now you're playing with Joe Flacco, who will throw the ball and air it out. Oh, I'm good. I can go play.
It could have been that. It may have been. He looked a little banged up, and I think the fact that he only had the 3 catches, he probably was a little bit hurt, but you're not wrong because this team is better with Flacco. They just are. They're more well-rounded.
If it's Richardson, I'm definitely looking to get invested in the Fins here. If it's not, then I want nothing to do with this game.
Me too.
But something I will going to do is, as long as we're getting these Tyreek numbers at under 60, I'm just going to keep on betting him. If McDaniels, he went over his total last week. McDaniels is going to scheme a way to get better, to get him the ball. The Colts, run this zone coverage. PFF hasn't posted their numbers yet, so I'm sorry I don't know him, but he historically has done well against zone coverage. Colts give up the 6th most yards per game to opposing wide receivers. You can get Hill at 55.5.
And they're coming off a bye also. So they've had some time now with no Tua to try to figure some things out for Hill.
How can you not take that? Like,
That's a great number.
I'm going to be on Hill. I'm going to use Hill in my DraftKings lineup. I think he's a sneaky play. I'm going to be all about Tyreek Hill. And in terms of sides, look, Armstead's supposed to be back. That's going to shore up the offensive line of the Dolphins. Colts, great offensive line. Taylor banged up. Is Taylor going to play or is Sermon going to play? Like, we don't know what's going on there. Obviously, not having Taylor hurts a lot. And we mentioned it. I don't trust Anthony Richardson. I don't think he's as good a quarterback as Joe Flacco is. So If it's Flacco, I'm not going to get involved. If it's Richardson, I'm going to look to get involved with the Dolphins. Regardless, I'm going to have the Hill receiving yard over.
Another really nice game this week. We have the Lions at the Vikings. Vikings are a slight favorite in this one. It looks like it's kind of just about a 1-point favorite on the side of the Vikings.
All over the place. And we really So here's the thing. Like, we have a couple ways to look at this. Now, how are the Lions going to handle not having Hutchinson?
And watching him get carted off the field, a guy who's like a big part of your team. What's that going to do?
PFF has them graded as the top pass rushing unit. Now, obviously, that's based on Hutchinson there. Without Hutchinson there, how is that going to look?
Yep.
They had the best overall defense. Without Hutchinson, how is that going to look when you can't generate any pressure? Jefferson has 8 against the Aaron Glenn defense, averaging 8 receptions, 146 yards a game. Now, I know the Lions went out. They got Carlton Davis. They used some draft capital, but they still are giving out a ton of yards. I don't think they have anyone that can stop Justin Jefferson. Teams 5-0 ATS in their 6th game are 57% ATS. But when they're the favorite, like the Vikings are, that dips down to 45%. When they're home favorites, it dips down to 25%. Campbell as a dog, 61%. Another question we need to seriously start to have, are Flores and O'Connell just 15 yards ahead of everybody and are just insanely good coaches? Or have they just been playing against teams that aren't as good as we thought they were, and they've took advantage of their schedule?
Well, because so far, they have spent the most time leading the first 5 games of the season over the last 40 years since the 1998 Broncos. So the top 3 teams in most time spent leading in the first 5 games of the season. The 1998 Broncos won the Super Bowl. Then the Vikings, then the 1999 Rams won the Super Bowl. So they are up there metrics-wise with legit teams. And you know, the thing is, like in a couple of the games, as you were pointing out, how good, like, can we trust Sam Darnold to do this, right? Well, how about last time we saw him in London? He had a brutal week. He was graded 28 out of 32. He was 14 of 31. He actually came out briefly because he took a couple big hits. He missed some wide open guys. He ended up throwing more incompletions than completions for the first time this year, but they still won. And the one thing that's impressed me a little bit about him, Eric, is that he's had these glimpses in the games where it's like, uh-oh, you're going to see him start to unravel now. But every one of these games this year, he's had to get the ball late in the game and go on a drive to extend it against San Francisco. It was 20-7. Jones fumbles going into the end zone, and the Vikings were about to get up 27-7. Instead, San Francisco comes down, scores a touchdown. It's 20-14. So now they're only up by 6 with 10 minutes to go. A lot of pressure on you. Sam goes on a 14-play, 62-yard drive to kick a field goal, put them up by 2 scores. Green Bay, same thing. Vikings get out to a huge lead. Green Bay cuts it to 28-22 with 10 minutes left, right after a Darnold sack fumble. He shakes it off, leads a field goal drive of 3:26 to go up by 9 with 6 minutes left. And then the Jets, they cut it to 3 because he threw a bad interception with 6 minutes left to go in the game. He leads them on a 9-play, 47-yard drive. It eats up 3 minutes of clock, kicks a field goal, makes it a 6-point game, forces them to score a touchdown, and then we saw Rodgers throw an interception. So, yeah, I mean, I say all of that to say Sam has not been perfect. He's made the plays when he's needed to, but this team leans on their defense, their coaching staff, and Jefferson. That's how they go.
Like, I think they lean on Aaron Rodgers too, because once he left the London game, that offense really struggled to move the ball. I think that's kind of the key, is we need to look to see how he looks, is what exactly is going on with him. The weakness of the Flores defense is defending the run.
Yes.
Lions have the best defensive line.
Because they can, and Eric, just basically, right? That's one of those things that you can think about logically. Why is that? Well, because it negates the really aggressive blitzers and the pass rushers that the Vikings have. So when you can run right at them and slow those guys down, then they can't just sit there and tee off on you. So the best way to negate a really good pass rush is with a very good run game.
Exactly. And with how good this team has been running the ball, I don't know if the Vikings are going to be able to get stops. Lions, the thing they do great is it's just dink, 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 boom. 15-yard pass to Tim Patrick, 40-yard bomb to William. You know what I mean? It's dink, 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 and then when they just catch you sleeping with a big explosive play. Teams that won by 35 points or more the following week, 41% ATS. So the question is, do we fade the Lions because they won big last week, or do we fade the Vikings because
they're still a little overvalued? Probably.
No,
right?
I just don't know what to do. And I mean, the end of the day, we can see Montgomery and Gibbs having a good day running the ball, and we can't see we can see the Lions struggling to stop Jefferson. Yeah. I think the best thing to do in this game is you stack Jefferson, and then you pick one of the Lions running backs. I would pick Montgomery because he gets more of the inside the 10-yard carries, and you just have those two as your staples in DFS and just kind of build around them. In terms of side, I think this is another game where you're going to be able to get plus money on both teams. So if you can just
wait for the right moment,
get plus money on both teams, you can make money. But I think Detroit's going to be a public dog. There's nothing I want a glimpse of. So I'm just staying away.
I want to give a little love to Goff because he was bad compared to last year for the first couple games of this season. The last 2 weeks, he's had a passer rating of over 150. He is the only quarterback with a 150-plus passer rating in a game against the Cowboys all time. Over his last 3 games, he's completed 81.8% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's only the 4th player since 1970 to complete at least 80% of their passes in a 3-game stretch, while also throwing for 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. Breeze, Peyton Manning did it twice, and Phillip Rivers. So I mean, he's just been awesome. The only quarterback ever with back-to-back 150 plus ratings in their starts, Jared Goff and Drew Brees. So some really nice company for him. I have no idea what to do with the Eagles overall as a team. I don't think they should be favored by 3 in this game on the road with Sirianni still kind of puffing his chest out. Everything flipped for me on Sirianni, and I think for you, Eric, last year in that game against the Chiefs. Even though they won that game, he was out there acting like a fool. And I think he lost a lot of the guys in the locker room right then, and he does a lot of weird stuff. I thought when he initially came to the Eagles, he did a really good job of establishing a strong running team, kind of changing their identity. And right now, I don't really know who they are as much. I like the Giants spot in here. You were kind of pointing out the Giants had been a team that was already a little unlucky. They had another game last week that was unlucky. Do we know about neighbors here?
I mean, I don't think he's going to a Travis Scott concert during the week.
Yeah.
So, like, I look at it like this. I absolutely love the Giants in the spot. It opened at 4.5. It's down to 3. I missed the number. I'm not getting involved. I'm not going to chase, especially after I got my ass handed to me on Joe Public week last week.
Yep.
Barkley revenge game. Obviously, what he's going to be, Sirianni is going to go out of his way to get him a touchdown. So, obviously, if you can get plus money on that bet, maybe I'll look to do it. My issue with the Eagles is I do not understand why they just don't look at how the Lions play and say, look, we're going to dink it to Smith. We're going to sweep it out to Barkley. We're going to bring in Gainwell, do some stuff with him. Then, boom, we're going to take the long ball to A.J. Brown.
They got the pieces.
They just don't. Their offense looks out of sorts. Obviously, it insanely struggles without A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is the engine of that offense. Hurts doesn't look himself at all. He doesn't look right. Eagles have been bad defending the pass, 26 DVOA. On my note says there's no concert in town, so I think Neighbors is going to be playing. Even like look, and they adjusted too. It's just not clicking with the Fangio defense yet. There's always the second year. I mean, the Neighbors over props. That's the way to go in this. Eagles obviously not putting away the Browns kind of stood out to me. They had some chances to put them away. Home divisional dogs getting a low number is historically a spot I like. But again, I missed the 4.5. This opened up at 4.5 and then just immediately went down. Giants should have covered. When you look at this, they gave up 2 touchdowns and 75 total yards. Just 2 big plays on broken runs. I think they're due. I think this game is going to come down to a final possession. But you know, if it ticks back up to 3.5, 4, I'll get involved. But at this number right now, I'm not doing anything.
Same with me. It'll be on the Giants side if I had to pick one way or the other. But as far as going out and betting this game when we missed the number, definitely not
this
the
game. This is a week. Like I got a couple ones. Like I have 3 bets locked in. I got a couple more like a little later. But I think this is definitely going to be more of a player prop central
yes,
for me.
Yes, I agree. Raiders, Rams, Rammies, gosh, 7-point favorite. They're coming off the bye, and I guess so for the Rams, maybe this could help them get a lot healthier because they were really banged up on the offensive line and the defensive side, and then with some of their playmakers, with Higbee, with Kupp, with Nakua. Do we know the status of any of those guys?
I think Kupp is going to be a go from what I've
I think so too.
I mean, the main thing you look at this game, are the Raiders going to have that rah-rah spot after the Adams trade? And I'm going to say this, and I went off on them during my show if you want to hear the full-blown rant. The Raiders looked like the most pathetic franchise in the world with how they offered, how they did the Devontae Adams thing. If I'm the owner of the Raiders, I go, look, man, we made a commitment to you. I'm going to pay you, but I am not trading you to go be with your little buddy, Aaron Rodgers. I am not doing it. If you're adamant about getting it traded, I'll trade you to Carolina. Go have fun. You know, like I am not going to do that because right now, all that did to everyone in the locker room showed you that you could just walk over ownership and there's no respect whatsoever. And I lost all the respect in the world for Devon. And it doesn't matter because it's me and he gives 2 shits. but for him being at Aaron Rodgers' house, doing that little coy look during the McAfee show, it just showed me he's a tool. And now his hamstring is magically better and he can play. If he was faking it, there should be heavy fines because you can't fake an injury. If like you're going to be like, hey, we're keeping you out because he doesn't want to play, that's fine. But we all know his hamstring was fine. He just wasn't playing because he wanted to get traded. The Raiders, there's only 32 people that own a team, and you own the Raiders that are based in Las Vegas. Grow a goddamn backbone. It was the most pathetic lack of leadership I have ever seen. And I don't think the Raiders will ever do anything. They brought in Brady. Maybe he'll change the culture. But in terms of the game, Trey Tucker is a stud, only playmaker. He's going to be insanely lower price this week. I think he's a must start for DFS. Obviously, Kyron Williams is having a great season. He has this TD streak, and it really seems the Rams want him to extend that and get him the ball. So I look to play him in DFS. Kupp is Kupp. He's going to be great. Raiders can't defend the slot. He's going to be underowned. He's in line for a good game. O'Connell, worst starting quarterback in the league. Rams are going to be able to get to him. Raiders blocking scheme. The Raiders changed their – Zamir Smith had a great and close to the year last year. They ran this power gap scheme, switched to a wide running scheme, and Zamir White's just been lost in it. And I really think the issue here is Luke Getsy just isn't doing a good job putting the team in a position to win and playing with your assets. He was the coach, the offensive coordinator of the Bears last year, and he had no idea what to do with Fields. You look at Fields now in with Arthur Smith, he's looking decent. He's putting up good totals. Most would think teams on a 2-game winning streak, like your Rams coming off a bye, would be a good spot. Only 48% against the pass, against the spread. Like, this is another thing I just don't know what to do. I think this is a pretty big number for your boys to cover.
Way too big.
Mean to the Raiders, but we just don't know. Maybe this team's done.
I know. And Pierce might. We're supposed to have a really good defense to lean on. Their defensive, they're bad by all the defensive metrics because they got hurt. They're the worst graded team on tackles. They're the first team to have trailed by double digits in each of their first 6 games since the 2021 Lions. I mean, they're behind or they're down by 10 in every game. You're talking about the owner. You'll like this. Since Mark Davis' full season as the Raiders owner in 2012, here's where the Raiders rank in some key statistics. Win percentage, 28th. He's 403. Points per game, 28th. Points allowed per game, 32nd. Point differential per game, 30th. Playoff berths, 5, which is or playoff berths 2. So there's a 5-way tie for 27th. They've been to the playoffs twice. And playoff wins, 0. Not good.
So, he's got the team because of App.
Yep. Not good.
And he's just, it is what it is. Like, it's just, he's getting walked over. No one in that building respects him. Maybe Brady in there, he'll have a little respect and he can change around because it's fun. When the Raiders are good, it's fun. They're
absolutely
a franchise. But right now with their situation, it's going nowhere fast. With the Rams, though, this is a big number, man.
I know, for a team that's not deep and that hasn't been able to score quite enough. I mean, I couldn't lay it with the Rams, but I can't play with the Raiders.
We don't know how much fight this team is going to have, though. You know what I mean? Like, so
the last 3 Raiders head coaches, Pierce, McDaniels, and Gruden. Jeez, that's just brutal.
Yeah, it's just
brutal.
Not good.
Commanders and Panthers. You kind of teased this game a little earlier on as the Commanders are an 8-point favorite in this game, man. I know Carolina has a bad defense, but offensively, they put up 335 total yards last week, and you have been really hitting on Chuba Hubbard. He's gone 4 straight games with 90 rushing yards.
But we're going to have to wait because I'm looking right now. FanDuel, Rivers,
8.5.
Fanatics,
9.
Sugar House. It's all the way up to 8.5.
Oh my gosh! So we're waiting on this.
And I'm going to be on the Panthers here.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to do it. Quinn as a favorite, 37%, laying over 3, 41%, laying over 7, 36%. Last 7 years, non-conference favorites, laying over 3 or more, 45% against the numbers. PFF has the Panthers graded as a top 10 offensive line, and the Commanders are allowing the 10th most rushing yards per game. If the Panthers are able to keep this close, they're going to be able to run the ball. And when you're able to run the ball, that means Jaden Daniels and crew are on the sidelines. Last 20 years, teams on a 3-game losing streak are 59% ATS when they're a dog, 56% when they're a road dog, when they're a road god getting over a field goal, 56% as well. Trends kind of point to the Panthers. How did the Commanders respond to a loss? They're everyone's joyful story or whatever. Now they had their first time they were punched in the face. How are they going to respond to that? Daniel's height, like, he can't throw to the left side of the field. Like, if you can literally just take away the right side of the field, he's going to be lost. That's why McLaurin's lining up at the right side all the time, because that's where the only place he can throw it. I think the Panthers are going to be able to run the ball. I think they're going to limit time of possession. I think they're going to keep Daniels on the sidelines. Historically, Quinn's teams don't cover by this much because the Commanders can't stop the run. They have a bad run defense. I think the Panthers are going to be able to move the ball. And when we look back at last week, they were right in that game, but there was a Dalton turnover in the red zone. If they score there, I think they end up getting the cover. I'm gonna take the Panthers here. Like, I'm just not sold on this Commanders team. I think they put a couple good games together and they took advantage of some matchups.
I'm with you. The Panthers are one of these teams that I think they're a little bit more competent right now. Gosh, they've got some.
Well, we just got to wait. I mean, this could get.
Yeah.
This
could get to 10. This could get close to, I mean, I don't, not, but this is one of those games where everybody starts leaning on them because last week the Commanders played solid. It was a game where things didn't go their way. They hung tough in that game with Baltimore, but there's going to be one of those weeks coming still for Washington where everything goes wrong.
I'm not saying get with Baltimore. You know, they were just able to move the ball. Baltimore made mistakes. Baltimore, and I'll be honest, like I said on my show, if Baltimore is legit the best team, what's holding them back is they hired Orr as their DC, and it's just not clicking. If they're legit about making a run, they need to get rid of him. But with how good they've been, there's no justification. Their defense is going to be what stops them. This next game, like, look, you got to do it, dude. You're getting Mahomes as a dog. How can you not take Mahomes as a dog? I took him at plus 1.5. Teams that are 5-0 to start the season and are playing the 6th game that are road dogs in 20 years. So a huge sample size. 71% against the number. Mahomes is a small dog, small sample size, 81% against the number. Reed as a road dog, 41, 21, and 2, 66%, 28.3% ROI. Reed on extended rest, 59%. This key to the 49ers offense is Deebo Samuel. He's struggled against the Chiefs. In all his games, regular season playoff games against the Chiefs, averaging 4 receptions, 38 yards, and has not scored a touchdown. Obviously, the 49ers are not nearly as good as they were last year, but what's been the big difference? Last year, they're the best scoring team in the red zone. This year, 25th red zone team. So they're just not scoring once again in opponents' area. Ayuk has had one good game against the Cardinals, has looked off the season. Obviously, when you miss all of training camp, that is what is going to hurt. When we look at their defense, it's just been off this year. Warner, Bosa have been studs. They've graded out well by PFF, but PFF has them as the 7th worst tackling team, the 9th worst run team. Chiefs' offensive line is a top 10 unit per PFF. I think they're going to be able to protect Mahomes, but they're going to be able to open up some running lanes for Kareem Hunt. And we need to remember this offense was generated for Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt was here before he had that incident that he moved on from, but now he's back and he looks great. And this team hasn't lost a beat since moving on from Pacheco. I know everyone made a big deal about the Rashid Rice thing, but we need to remember Juju Smith-Schuster was in that role during his first stint with the Chiefs, and he was 17th in yards after catch. And he put up 136. I had him 30-1 to have the most receiving yards in that Monday night game. He fits this role great. I don't think the 49ers have the speed to get with Worthy. And if we're playing a game where there should be a lot of points with the matchups, and I have one team that's struggling to score in the red zone, you know what I mean? It just makes sense. I'm going to take Mahomes as a dog here. And the clip I keep playing in my head is last year in the Super Bowl, Shanahan not knowing the rules in overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I don't know. I'm just going to take the Chiefs here. I figure anytime you get Mahomes as a dog, you just got to.
I mean, 10-3 straight up as an underdog, playoffs included. Just the thing about this team too is they've just been finding ways to win this year. They've won 11 straight games without scoring more than 27 points. That's an NFL record. They have gone 16 straight regular season games without winning the turnover margin.
Yeah.
They've won all of those games. They've won how many of those games? They've won 11 straight without scoring more than 27, 16 straight without winning the turnover margin, undefeated so far to start the year. And they've also played the most difficult schedule in the league. I'm on the same side with you. And for a lot of the people out there that point out that the Chiefs, the refs loves the Chiefs late in the game. Since Patrick Mahomes became the starter in 2018, the Chiefs have been penalized for 911 more yards than their opponents. Only the Saints have a worse penalty yard differential in that time stretch.
Yep.
So I know that we can see those individual plays at the end of the game sometimes, but it can't always just be that one play. Like throughout the games, play down to down is what matters.
Adds up. And it's,
you know what I mean?
You're getting Mahomes as a dog, and like Kelsey has done well. It's just when you just look at the X's and O matchups, you just have to do it. Next game, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, no, let's get right on into it. Jets and Steelers.
We got Tomlin as a dog, 65% ATS, home dog, 75% ATS, primetime dog, 62% ATS. I really think this Jets, we're going to start to see some steam because people think Davante Adams is 2019 Davante Adams, 2019 Aaron Rodgers. This is 2024. And the biggest weakness of the Jets is their defensive line and their secondary. And he's not going to be lining up at all. The Jets cannot stop the run. Harris is having a great season, averaging over 4 yards of carries. I think he's going to be able to get his against the Jets. The Jets defense made Ray Davis look like old school Herschel Walker. Now, in terms of the secondary, my big knock against Sauce Gardner and why I had Stingley graded higher than him is I felt Sauce Gardner hand fighted too much. And for whatever reason, his first 2 years in the league, they were not calling him when he was hand fighting. Now they're calling him all the time, and he's getting all these PIs. He hasn't learned to stop using his hands. Jets offensive line, is it going to be able to protect against Watt and open up some run lanes so Hayward can't stuff the run? I think that's a key thing that the Steelers have the advantage. How are these young guys on the Jets going to respond? If I'm Garrett Wilson, Priest Hall, I'm pumped for the year. Hey, you know what? We have Aaron Rodgers. You know what? Offensive line is better. I haven't been getting mine. And then Doling's finally the coordinator. Wilson getting targets. Hall running the ball. Now you bring in Davante Adams. How are these young guys going to react to that? That's number one. That's another thing. Excuse me. Steelers obviously have the coaching advantage. But to me, why I haven't pulled the trigger on this, who's the starting quarterback?
I know. I would be fine with Fields. If Fields was starting, I would take it too. I don't want Wilson. I don't think I want this with Wilson.
Simon is such a stand-up guy. He guaranteed Wilson he'd be the starter if he came there. He guaranteed him, and he is such an old school guy. He will not go back on his.
My word is my bond type thing. Yeah.
He won't. But that's why all those guys go to war for him. And maybe this line, if it is Wilson, maybe we'll drift up a little bit more. And if it drifts up a little bit more, I'm still going to look to play it.
And why is Fields such a big thing to him? Just because Freiermuth is the second leading receiver on this team. This Wilson from Michigan, who they drafted, has been nothing. They legitimately have no number 2 wide receiver. That's why you need Fields there, just so he can extend the play, have a running aspect. I'll eventually be on the Steelers here, but in terms of why am I going to rush to bet this? If it's Wilson, this number is going to rise up. Fields has to be more value than Wilson. So I'll wait. And especially if it's announced Devontae is going to play, I think this could get to 2.5, 3. So I'm going to wait.
I agree with you. I really want to be on the Steelers side here, but I would prefer Fields or the better number. 2 Monday night games this week to discuss. Eric, we got the Ravens at the Bucs. The Ravens are a 3.5-point favorite at Tampa. Tampa had a monster week last week. They put up 594 total yards. That's a franchise record. That's the 4th most by any team in the NFL in a game in the last 5 years. That's a top 4 total yards game. Baker had 325 through the air, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They ran for 277 rushing yards, an average of almost 8 yards per carry. It was like a crazy video football game. They leaned on Godwin, and Sean Tucker had the kind of breakout game, 192 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, the flip side, the Ravens. Derrick Henry has just been awesome, and it's so nice for them when they can just lean on the backfield that can run with Henry and with Lamar. In the 4th quarter, when they were up, Derrick Henry had 8 carries for 54 yards, and it was his 20th game with 100 rushing yards and multiple touchdowns. He's the first player to score a touchdown rushing in each of the team's first 6 games of the season since LT back in 2005. And you pointed out a little earlier, they were awesome, focusing in on Zay Flowers, dominating on short, intermediate stuff. They've been good. I mean, and they're like going to run the ball. 39th straight game where they've rushed for 100+ rushing yards, breaking a tie for 3rd longest in NFL history. They do like to spit leads out late, though. We've seen them do that. And Tampa can score, and we had all those road favorites last week winning. This seems like one of those games where I would want to be on the Tampa side, but can you jump in there?
I want to get so the key thing to me is this. I mentioned it with the Ravens. Their defensive coordinator is brutal. You can pass on this team. You can move the ball on them. When you look at the weapons that the Bucs have, I mean, Godwin in the slot, Evans on the outside, they're going to be able to move the ball. Jackson laying over 3.5 or more, 41% against the spread. The Ravens obviously like to do what? They like to run at the ball. You got Vita Vea in the middle. He's going to be able to clog up the running lanes, get a little bit behind the chains. Bucs offensive line has been great this year. I think they're going to be able to give Mayfield some time. They're going to open up stuff for Bucky Irvin, Rashard White, and I think they're going to be able to move the ball. Jackson, when you look at the spot historically, he has not played well in his home state of Florida for whatever reason. I feel it's a letdown spot for the Ravens. Just had the big win against the Commanders. That's a vicinity type rivalry. Now you have the game against the Browns on deck. I know the Browns are down this season, but it is a divisional game. And this is just kind of the spot the Bucs win. Bucs play up well. It's when the Bucs have to win with margin, we want to fade them. When they have to play up, look, they played great against the Lions.
Oh, and this is a Baker thing too, right? Baker plays well in this situation, like back against the wall, not when he's supposed to be the favorite, covering with margin. Yeah. Like last week, they win, they crush, but they're sloppy. They're turning the ball over a lot.
I mean, they're spotted 17 points.
Yeah, and then they win, and then they were down by 3 going into halftime, even after being spotted 17.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. It was just like, just don't outthink the room. This is the Bucs spot. But my thing is this, is if Mike Evans doesn't play, I think this goes up to 4. Mike Evans is a little bit banged up. This is a game I'm not rushing to get to the window at either, but I'm going to be on the Bucs as well. And then the other Monday night game, I mean, and one more thing about the Ravens. I know that the quarter, and I gave this one out on my show last night on Tuesday night. I know the MVP historically has been a quarterback-driven thing, but if the Ravens do have the best record, I don't think they're going to give Lamar Jackson the MVP. Derrick Henry right now is at 60-1 to win the MVP. That is worth a small pizza bet. So whatever you spend on a small pizza, $25, throw that on a 60-1 and just forget about it. Maybe you'll get a nice little surprise come January. But I could definitely see him, especially if he runs for over 2,000 yards, him getting the MVP. In this game, Chargers against the Cards, Murray has a dog, 63%. I mean, he covers, he extends plays. You mentioned the thing when we were talking about the Cardinals earlier. Good game, bad game. Good game, bad game.
Yep.
I always write this little recap article, and I mentioned how Gannon has them playing better, but they just haven't been able to carry over momentum from one game to another.
Like the high ceiling games and then low floor games the next week.
Chargers do have some offensive line injuries. I think that's going to hurt them a little bit. You know, we've already seen Edwards get a little banged up. I think it's only a matter of time before Dobbins gets banged up. Do we really trust these playmakers? I really don't think I trust the Chargers playmakers, especially in the receiving game. Cards, you know, you got McBride, you got Connors, you got Wilson, you got Harrison. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. You know, these small home dogs, September and October historically cover. I just kind of think the Cards are in a great spot where they're going to be able to move the ball on the ground. Murray's going to be able to extend plays. And Herbert's still a little banged up, and they're banged up in the trenches. So I'm going to take the Cards here.
Yeah, I agree.
Game,
what was that?
I think this could go up. You know, especially because what do people do?
Late, they want to bet the favorite, try to catch up.
They chase. You know, they chase.
Monday night, last game of the week, second Monday night game. You're already down a little in the other game. You're going to try to chase here. I agree with you. I haven't been that impressed overall with the Chargers. They've kind of caught teams in good spots and taken advantage of that. And that's the mark of a better coached football team. Like, they're not making mistakes and losing games they should have won. I just don't know how good they really are. And I actually like the Cardinals' ability, like their A game and what they can do offensively is really, really good. Let's see if they can just keep them in the game defensively. Erik, buddy, thank you so much for talking a little extra, kind of leading the way a little tonight. I leaned on you a little bit more because I'm struggling with the voice, but it was a big, big help from you, buddy. And thanks so much. I wish you the best of luck with all your plays this week. What's on tap for you? Normal podcast schedule and everything coming up over the next few?
Yeah. And look, I apologize last week. I have no idea what happened with Apple, but they didn't put my podcast out until Sunday afternoon. So, you know, normal stuff. Podcast comes out. I will have some UFC stuff, some NFL stuff on it, some DFS stuff on it. And then my show, my boy David was on it last night. Him and I just each gave out 3 bets for NFL Sunday.
And don't forget, Erik and I, every Sunday morning, NFL Betting Blitz on YouTube, on Erik's YouTube channel or on my YouTube channel. That's what She Said podcast. Check that out. We go through all the Sunday and Monday games. And at that point, Sunday morning, right before the games, we know all of the injury news, like the last minute injury updates and all the players that are in or out come out right during the middle of our show. So we're able to give you that info, the last minute lines, any DFS stuff. Erik, buddy, thanks so much, man. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk to you this weekend.
Sounds good, man. Talk soon.
Good luck this week, everyone. Playing